So,
Okay.
Joe, welcome to the Lifted podcast.
Thanks.
So, we have talked so much about toxic relationships on the podcast recently.
Yeah.
And I was in a toxic relationship for like 7 years. It was awful. And I feel like my low key goal right now, I don't know why, is to make sure that like other girls aren't going through that shit.
Literally same. Yeah,
And
like
you
same.
you've been through that.
Yeah, over and over again, like a dumbass.
So tell us about your first toxic relationship. I want to know the details.
So I'm 30 now. I don't want to talk about that. And my first one was when I was 18 to 21. Growing up, I was like the ugliest girl, like afro, skinny, unibrow, not cute, never had a boyfriend. My first boyfriend was at 18. He was friends with my brother. And I don't even know how, but we started dating. And to me, it was like, wow, a guy wants to date me. Like, yeah, I'm going to be your girlfriend. And I came from a super religious, I still do religious household. And I was like, okay, he's Christian. Like, perfect. I'm going to marry him. Like, I know I'm going to marry him. And he's friends with my brother and blah, blah, blah. And like, it was fine probably for like 6 months. He came from like a very religious, like strict family, like super, way more religious than I could ever think. And
So more religious than your
oh
family.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, but like to the point where like women have a role and like men are better. Let's just say that. And I just remember one day we were driving and I can't remember what happened, but I felt unsafe and I was like, I'm going to get out of the car and like walk home because we were in the field near my house, like parked near there. And that was the first time where like he grabbed my wrist really hard and like wouldn't let go. And I was like, okay, like maybe this is normal.
6 months in?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I'm 18. Like I'm like, oh.
Also your first relationship, you're like,
Yeah, and like growing up, like obviously I was disciplined, so maybe in the back of my mind I was like, oh, like maybe I did something wrong and like I'm being disciplined because of the man's role as per his views and whatever. And I remember going home that day and I did walk. I left the car and I was like, I want to go home. So I set my boundary there and I went home and I remember my brother opened the door and he saw my wrist and he's like, what happened? And I was like, oh, like nothing, like I just like fell, which didn't even make sense because like, why is there a handprint on your wrist if you just fell? And like he knew and he told me he knew and they weren't friends anymore. Like he didn't ask my brother permission when we started dating. So my little brother was like, yeah, no, like fuck that guy. And he was 1 year younger than me. And he was like this really nerdy guy. Everyone thought he was so nice. And I was like, Joanna, always dressed up and like on Instagram and whatever. So even when I did tell people, they were like, oh, he's so nice.
like your boyfriend.
Like my
outside.
boyfriend, like he's such a good, like he's such a nice guy. Like, are you sure?
So nobody's going to believe you.
No.
Of course.
And that was like the first time. And then like over the years, it definitely got worse. It was like, I don't even know how it got that bad. Like, I know I allowed some of it for sure, but like to the point where he's driving my car he's driving my car and I'm like, I just go to change the song. And I remember him just like pulling my hair, grabbing my glasses and trying to throw them out of the window and like, just like going off at me because I tried changing the song in my own car. And I don't remember if they actually flew out the window or if they just like hit the floor, but I was just like, what the hell? Like, what's going on?
Well, you're probably just taken back. You're like, you're just trying to do something normal in your own car. And you're like, what the fuck is happening?
So it was like, okay, like now that's getting normalized or like, and I would tell some of my friends at the time, which I'm not friends with now, but like to them, it was like a joke because that kind of stuff is like, this is like 2013, 2014. So it wasn't like people talk about abuse by any means. It's just like, oh, haha, like maybe it was just a joke, or are you sure that happened, Joanna? Like that sounds very dramatic.
Also, it's your first relationship, so it's not like you really
I have no comparison.
Yeah.
To
You're
anything.
like, maybe this is normal. Maybe
Yeah.
this is like what?
Mind you, my parents are in like the most loving relationship ever. So to me, I'm like, oh my God, but like he's religious and like we're gonna have a happy life because so am I, and like my parents like him. And I remember one time it got to the point where he had like beat me with my car keys, but there was like marks on my forehead from it and like I was bleeding. And at that point I was like, I'm going to talk to you. Like, I'm talking to your mom. And like, I don't know why it wasn't like, I'm leaving you. It's like, I'm telling your mom. Because again, I'm 19, I'm a baby. And I remember telling his mom, and like, she was pretty much like, okay, well, like, you're part of the family now. Like, that's how I perceived it. It's like, it wasn't like, oh my God, my son's like a piece of shit. I'm so sorry. Like, you should leave him. It's like, well, like, you're part of the family now. And like, I'll for sure talk to him. But like, pretty much this is what you chose. And I was like, okay. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, like, and I know the dynamics of his family are maybe a little bit different. I don't know what happened with his parents and their relationships, but I was like, okay. So, like, mind you, this was from 18 to 21. So I was with this guy for a long time. And it just progressively got worse. Like, okay, then I started going to the club with my friends. And for him to pick me up, it was like, I couldn't go home unless I gave him what he wanted, even if I said no. Even if I'm drunk and I'm like, no, I don't want to be physical with you tonight. It's like, well, you're not going home until you do. To the point where like driving outside of Calgary to a truck stop, or like near, like all the way near Strathmore, which is almost an hour away from where I am, until like I gave him what he wanted. And then I could go home. Yeah. And I've never even said this stuff out loud.
That's
I'm like
actually
shocked I'm saying this out loud. I've never said this out loud. I'm like shaking a little.
no, but that's actually just like, okay, I can, I feel like when you're young and you're in a relationship too, like, weirdly, men feel like they have this, like, control because I feel like as girls, we don't really know our worth yet. Like,
No.
unless some girls do, and some girls really honestly do and would never do, like,
Yeah.
shit like that. They would be like, what the actual fuck? But a lot of times, we have no idea and we're thrown into these situations and we're like,
Like, this is just it now. Like,
yeah.
cool.
Especially with how his mom reacted and stuff. You were
Yeah.
probably like, okay, like she's an adult, she's older than me, she knows what's right. So it's kind of like,
And this is like normal to their family.
yeah.
And now, like, we've talked about, like, I'm 19. Like, my dream is to get married. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to marry him. And, like, this is my life now. And then it just got to a point where, like, it did turn a little bit psychological, where he was like, no one gives a shit about you. And, like, I'm all you have. And then, I was very dramatic to, like, some of my friends and stuff. But like, I only believed he was the man for me. And then it got to the point where he would be like, yeah, I'm coming over tonight to see you. Like, I love you. And then ignore all my calls, be with his friends, and be like, why the fuck would I come see you? Like, you're not worth it. And just like those mind games.
So yeah, was it a lot of back and forth, like, oh my God, I love you so much and all this stuff, and then it was like, you're awful and all this
Yeah.
stuff, whatever. Really?
Oh, yeah.
So that's hard because, okay,
But that
it
came after.
really fucks you up though, because you're like, okay, well, this person, like, it's almost like they convince you that you're like the best thing ever and they love you so much and whatever. Oh my God, I'm so sorry for what I did or whatever it was. But then the next second, they're making you do like crazy shit, or
Like,
they're
you're
just
like
like,
worthless, and you're the crazy
yeah.
one. And like, to his friends, I was a crazy one. Like, look, she's calling me like 25 times when I told her I'm not seeing her tonight. Like, she's the reason I'm never with you guys. Like, that's pretty much how his friends perceive me. And I know that because they were like very vocal about it. Like, he would never abuse you and blah, blah, blah. And like, it just kept getting worse and worse. Like, telling me to like kill myself and like feeding me pills. And I just remember this one time. It's like shocking to me how many things I went through. And like, I'm just saying them out loud, but then I like say them and I'm like, oh my God, what the fuck was wrong with you? Like, even talking about it now, I'm like, I've never said this shit out loud. But like, he took me to the hospital once after me consuming a bunch of pills, and he pulled me right back into the car as soon as we parked an emergency. And he's like, no, because they're going to know, like, you're going to tell them that, like, you're going to tell them what happened. So no, I'm not, like, why the fuck would I let you go in there? And then he drove me to like some random community dumpster and like stuck his finger in my mouth until I like puked a bunch. And he's like, that's like, I'm not taking you to the hospital. And after that, he was like, if you go, I'm going to roll this fucking car. And he was just driving around crazy, being like, do you want me to roll the car? You want to die? We'll both die. Like,
That's terrifying.
and
You're
I'm,
like 19.
yeah,
Like,
at this point, I was probably 20. Like, it's been going on for so long.
yeah.
And I think like my last straw with it, like, my last straw, I think we had already broken up, and I was like, I can't, like, we're done. Like, I can't. And I can't remember if he followed me home or he dropped me off. What happened that day? But I did not want him inside my house. I know that much. And I went in the house, and I guess he came in maybe like 10, 15 minutes later. And he knows my parents' schedules. He knows the code to get into the house. Like, it's nothing new to him. But I was upstairs maybe changing or something, and I just hear something, and I know he's in different rooms that I'm not in, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, leave. Like, where even are you? Like, get out of my house. Like, please leave. And we finally like made it downstairs to the kitchen, and he's probably like standing where that plant behind you is. And I'm like, you need to leave. And I just remember throwing an empty water bottle, nothing crazy, like literally an empty water bottle, being like, leave, like, you need to leave. And that just like set him off. And he stormed towards me. And I don't know if I blacked out or like I just gave up, but in my mind, it was always either he's going to kill you or you're going to kill yourself. Like, that's it. Like, in my mind, I was like, I'm not going to even make it to 22 or 23. He's going to kill me or I'm going to kill myself. Like, there's nothing else. That's the value this man has put on me, and I truly believe it. Like, I could probably die right now. And I just remember him banging me against the marble countertops and just telling me, like, do you want to fucking die? Like, I will fucking kill you right now. And I just remember like giving up fighting and just like falling to the ground after. And I remember trying to go towards my house phone because 2014, there's house phones, like 2014, 2015.
Everyone's like, what's that?
Yeah. And he grabbed it from me and he threw it so hard on the floor that it shattered into like 30, 40 pieces. And you have to throw a house phone, like those things are sturdy. Like
They
you have
are
to throw
like,
that pretty fucking hard.
yeah.
And he took my cell phone because I had left it in the front, and he ran out of the house. So he's like, you're not fucking calling the cops. And like, it's just me and my small little dog at home. And the dog doesn't know what the hell's going on. Like, he just thinks we're playing. And I know my dad, the only other phone in the house was upstairs in my dad's office. And that's a corded phone. Like, even more unknown to the world, a corded phone. And I remember like, that was the first time I actually called 911. And I never called 911 before. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And I think in that moment, I was like, I want to live. Like, I really want to live. So I called 911, and he had the audacity and enough control over me to think he could come back in the house. And he did. And he sat on the couch in my dad's office while I'm on the phone with 911. And they're like, stay on the phone. Don't hang up. And I'm like, he's telling me to hang up. And I almost did so many times. And he literally was like, hang up. We can work through this. Like, you really think they're going to show up for you? Like, hang up. Hang up the phone. Like, hang up the phone and I'll give you your cell phone back. Like, hang up the phone and we can talk about it. And like, luckily I didn't hang up. And 2 cops showed up. And like, at that point, I'm in such shock. Like, I don't know. I didn't even look at my back. I didn't know my back was like black and blue from bruises. I didn't know my arm was bleeding from him throwing me around. Like, I genuinely did not know anything. They just came in, and like, he went downstairs and like calmly sat on the couch and just talked to them, acting like, you know, the innocent, nerdy, nice guy that he looks like. And they pulled me aside. Like, there's 2 of them. So one guy talked to him, one guy talked to me. And like, I was telling him what happened. He was like, you don't even have to finish your story. I can tell by the scene that I'm seeing, and like, you're bleeding. And then it's like that moment he said that, I looked over, and then I could feel all the pain of like everything. And like, then I could feel the pain in my back. And they were like, do you want to press charges? Do you want us to arrest him? And I said no. And I don't know why I said, like, half of me said no because like, I'm an idiot, and then like, I thought I loved him and he loves me, and this is how people show love. And the other half was like, holy shit, my ethnic parents are going to be home, and they're going to be so pissed if there's cops outside, because what the fuck would the neighbors think if there's cops outside? So yeah, I didn't press charges.
You know what else is like, when that shit happens, it's so fucking conflicting because you're with this person, and like, obviously, you know, you guys are dating. You've dated for a couple of years. Like, you've had a chance to like even if you don't think you were completely in love with this person, like you feel like you were.
Oh yeah.
So, but this person is doing this crazy shit to you, and you need someone to comfort you, and usually it's that person.
Oh yeah.
So who's comforting you
And that's like
when
your best
they're,
friend.
yeah. So
And
it's like
in your
you,
mind, he's like, I'm the only one for you.
so it's almost like I can totally understand that you wouldn't press charges because you're so confused as to like what the fuck is even happening.
Yeah.
Like,
And
and
like
is
he
this
went home.
okay?
Like he just went
That's
home.
just so, yeah.
And I don't even think that was the last time. Like I think I still saw him for like I like the last straw was probably one of my birthdays. He like the birthday right after that, he got me we had a 21st birthday for me. So yeah, I turned 21. My brother DJ'd. We like rented out a lounge. I wore a crop top. My boobs were all lifted. I look cute, you know? And he picked me up the next day being like, "Oh, my family has a cake at the house for you. Like I'm going to drive you." He picked me up in my car cuz he didn't have a car, like red flags all around. And he drove past his community. Like I lived in a community and he lived in the community like diagonal to it. Like if you drove, it's maybe 5-10 minutes. If you walked, it's like an hour. And he drove past it. And he told me to get the fuck out of the car because I dressed like a slut the night before and sluts deserve to walk. And it's like cold. It's March. And I only had like a sweater on and my phone was dead. And I kept turning around thinking like he's probably around the corner. Like he's gonna be like, this was enough. Like get in the car. But no, I made it. I couldn't. It was so cold. I couldn't make it all the way home. My best friend to this day, she lives in the community across from mine, and I made it to her house. And I was like, I just broke down crying. I was like, can you please drive me home? And her whole family was like, what is going on? And that was like, yeah. After that, I was just like, I'm done. Like I can't. And even then, it was like him calling me off private numbers, him going crazy.
That
Yeah,
is so
that was
crazy.
my first boyfriend. Good times.
Okay. Did you do any, did you get a restraining order or anything on him? No. Okay. Tell me about your other one. You had another toxic relationship.
Yeah, so after him, okay, like I'm an idiot. I took no time for myself. Let me just tell you, 2 weeks later, I had another boyfriend. Great stuff. That guy was okay. We dated for 4 years. Thought I was going to marry him. He was obsessed with making money. That was it. Like, that wasn't that, well, it was toxic, but it wasn't that toxic. Like, he dealt with a lot with healing me. 2 weeks after that, I started a new job. And then there's another guy, super, like, in my eyes, I'm like, oh my God, he's so good looking. He's tall. He's my type. He's interested in me. And, like, that one was, like, pure, like, it started off pure physical. Like, I'm attracted to you. You're attracted to me. Let's hook up. I'm like, okay, cool. Of course, I'm an idiot. And I'm like, wow, I really like him. And we work together and we have the same interests. And this is going to be something because we see each other every day. And from the get-go, he was pretty much like, I mean, to me, I guess I was delusional because he was like, Joanna, everything in life is temporary. He would always tell me that. So he already had that embedded in my mind that like, this isn't going to last forever, just so you know. And he would say it, but then like he's acting like my boyfriend. And we're doing things like he's my boyfriend.
So that's fucking
And I'm like
confusing.
introduced to his mom, but he's not my boyfriend. So I'm like, okay. And like COVID hit right when him and I like had started seeing each other. And like it would be like, oh yeah, I was planning on dumping you, but like by the end of the year. Like he would just say shit like that. And I'd be like, okay. But then like we'd hang out and I'm like, what's going on? Like I thought you just said that. And he's like, why would I say that? Like I would never say that to you. I was like, okay. Mind you, this guy's like a salesperson. So he knows how to like, he knows how to get what he wants.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. And I'm not a salesperson. I'm just like a girl behind a computer. So I'm like, oh, I don't understand, but okay. You're not hitting me. So that's fine. And then COVID happened and we saw each other all the time. And he's like, no, we're exclusive, like blah, blah, blah. And then I find out he's been on dating apps and going with out with girls. And I'm like, what the hell? And I only found out because I was like, hey, like it's been 1 year of us seeing each other exclusively. Like, should we do something? And he's like, yeah. And then randomly ghosted me, even though I see him at work all the time. Gave me the cold shoulder at work. And then randomly texted me like, yeah, I'm not into you anymore, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, I'm quitting this job. Fuck this job. I don't need this fucking job. Fuck this guy too. And I was doing decent at work. So they're like, please stay, like take a week off, go wherever. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to Kelowna because it's the middle of fucking COVID and that's the only place I can go. So me and my girlfriends rent a boat in Kelowna. And I'm like, I'm partying because I just got fucking dumped. So there's going to be a bunch of booze and alcohol and like a girl named Molly on this boat because we're going to have a good time. Who happens to be in Kelowna at the exact same time? That guy. Wasn't invited to my boat, but his friends and all of them were there. And they're like, can we come to your boat? Like, you're having a party boat for the day. I literally paid $1,500 for this thing. I'm like, okay, whatever. You're on a boat that you know there's drugs and alcohol on. He ends up consuming some drugs and alcohol. Well, alcohol he knew, but he ends up consuming some drugs. And then goes back to Calgary because he's so full of himself to tell everyone, Joanna drugged me. I refuse to work at this place. It's either me or her. She lured me to Kelowna, got me on a boat, and drugged me to try to get back with me. And I was like, what the fuck? And in my mind, I'm like, holy shit, did I do that? Because that's how convincing he is. Like, and I was like, oh my God, like, I didn't mean, like, I didn't do that. And everyone's like, you didn't fucking do that, dumbass. Like, I'm having to come down on my fucking life because apparently I drugged someone. And then 2 weeks later, he's like, I am so sorry. I would never, like, Joanna, you know I care about you and I want to be with you and blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. So then we're seeing each other again. But no, he was like dating girls the whole time. He told me I was hot enough to fuck, but not hot enough to date. Like, constantly in my mind, like saying things like that. But then, like, come over and, like, no, we're together. And then, like, no, we're not together. And, like, no, but you're forcing this. And I'm like, make up your mind. Like, are we together or not? But it was always, like, little comments, like, and it was, like, multiple times, like, oh, you're hot enough to fuck, not hot enough to date. Or Christmas, he lived with one of his best friends, and we all got each other gifts, and he didn't get me anything. And he was like, that should tell you how I feel about you and how I value you. And he's like, no one gives a shit, Joanna. And, like, he started drinking, like, I did something to him. And then I found out he's been texting girls all over again. And yeah, he pretty much, like, it eventually, like, it was the reverse of the other one because it didn't get physical until that point. But then he grabbed my wrist and he was like, no one would even care if you jumped off the balcony. And it's like, oh, fuck, like PTSD, I guess. Like, again, I let a man value me and now I'm, like, worthless pretty much. And to this day, I still work with this. So I'm not going to say too much about him. But, like, we are in totally separate relationships. And to this day, it's like, oh, Joanna's crazy. Or, like just stories made up about me. And it's like, Joanna, just keep your head down. Like, don't say anything about it. Like, just keep doing your job. Like, we know how he is. And it's like, yeah, but how much, like, can someone go through when you guys are letting someone get away with this? And I've even said it out loud, like, people would let this guy get away with rape. And the one response I've heard is, look at him, Joanna. He would never have to rape a girl. But he's just, like, that narcissistic and convincing that, like, he can say whatever he wants to me, to other people. And, like, I feel like that relationship was more fucked up to me because he would refuse to call me his boyfriend, act like a boyfriend, say all of this shit to me, devalue me. But in my mind, it's like, yeah, but he's not hitting you. So, like, this is so much better because he's not hitting you. So that's, like, your dream guy, Joanna, because he's not hitting you. Meanwhile, I've been, like, devalued to, like, a point where I was so fucking depressed, like, not eating, didn't think I was hot enough, like, stopped eating, pretty much was bulimic at a point, like, throwing up because I was hot enough to fuck but not hot enough to date. And he said that, and, like, it was, like, embedded in me forever because it was, like, a constant reminder from him too. Yeah, I pick them good.
You're like, you have a great track record.
I know. I
Should
know.
we interview your current boyfriend just so that we can make sure that like none of this shit's gonna
Yeah, maybe.
happen? Like, I'd
Bring
be
him
like,
up.
what are you gonna do in 2 years? Like, what kind of shit
We're
are you
two
gonna
years
pull?
in and he's pretty
Oh,
good.
he's good. Okay,
Yeah,
good,
like he
perfect. I
deals
love
with
that.
my shit a lot.
Aw.
But yeah, those
Well,
are my
yay. Okay, so with those two, okay, so one was really physical, which, and then you went into the one that was really like emotional
and like yeah, like
and like
psychological.
manipulating almost,
Yeah.
like really, which like, oh
I
my
feel
God,
like I'm
like,
not even touching on it as much as I should because I would never want to implicate someone I work with to this day. So, like, I'm making it not sound that bad, but emotionally and mentally, it was like fucked up. Like a
yeah.
constant cycle that I couldn't break. But
So
yeah,
how long did you see this guy? The second one?
2019 to 2021. And then we
Okay.
probably still hung out till 2022. Like, fucked up to the point where this man broke my heart, and I was still meal prepping for him for a year. Like, that's how much of a hold he had on me. But then he'd go around and tell people, like, oh, no, Joanna's fucking crazy. Like, I don't fuck with Joanna. And, like, she's just crazy. Like, she's making it all up. But then every Sunday I'm at your house. And it got to the point where I knew it. So, like, I'd snap a picture every time. I have records of it. Like, not that it would ever need to come out, but it's like, you're not delusional, Joanna. Like, you're literally hanging out with this guy every freaking week. Even though he's using you, for me, it was like, okay, but like, we're in each other's lives. Like,
You almost have to convince yourself that you're not crazy
oh, yeah.
because this person has convinced you that you are.
And
And
it's
you're
like,
like,
it's like, I feel like it's every human. You want what you can't have. But to me, it's like, I'm going to love him harder, or I'm going to love him so much that like he'll love me back. That was just like my mindset because I've done everything for you. Like, I've clearly shown you so much love. Like, I've been there for you and your family through so much. So, like, if I keep loving you, like, maybe you'll love me because I'm allowing you to put my worth on my life and, like, what my value is. And all that matters is it's coming from you because that's what I took on from my last relationship. I'm an idiot.
so, okay, with both these, physical and emotional,
Yeah.
what were like the patterns that you noticed, if anything?
I think it was just once a man has said something to me, like I just mentioned, like I was constantly allowing them to put like my worth on my life. Like if they said something to me, it's like, okay, I'm worthless. Like I have no value because that's the value he's put on me. So like now I believe that too. And it was said to me multiple times. So it's like, I think that was like the worst pattern for me because it's like I would come out of a relationship and be like, I'm a bad bitch. I know my value. And then the moment a guy says something to me, it's like, oh yeah, okay, like, that's actually what my value is. And that's probably what I deserve in life. And it was me allowing it to happen. Had I cut it off on both relationships right at the start and be like, don't fucking talk to me like that. Don't ever think you could talk to me like that. Like, you can't call me a cunt. You can't call me a bitch. You can't say that, like, I should jump off a fucking balcony or, like, kill myself. Like, both guys said that to me. And for me, it was just not like, holy shit, red flag, run away. It's like, oh yeah, that's my value now. That's what I'm worth. Yeah. Mind you, growing up in a religious household, it was literally like, Joanna, always turn the other cheek. Because that's what happens in the Bible. So I did. Over and over again. So
You're
sorry.
like, so that's what I did.
I
So
listened.
both of these, how did it affect like, because it obviously affected the rest of your life, like friends, family, everything else that you're, even work probably.
Yeah.
How did it affect that? Because I feel like a relationship is like such a fucking big part of our life that like when it is really toxic and stuff, like either there's lots of girls I'm sure that like, maybe if they're in a physical relationship or something, like they'll call into work because, they've got
Yeah.
bruises or something, or they'll, what else do people do? Yeah, like call into work just because they probably are like
Yeah.
whatever else,
Well,
like in their ear telling them shit.
the abusive one, like, and people don't even know, like, the extent of the abuse I went through, I think, because I made it look so, Like, my life on Instagram looks freaking bomb. No one would think like Joanna's going through shit and she's depressed or anything like that. But a big reason why I dropped out of college was the abuse. Like, the abusive relationship was definitely a big reason. And the only reason I got back into year two of college is because I finally told one of my instructors, like, listen, like, I just got out of an abusive relationship. And like, that's a big reason why I was never in school. And they had to have a meeting with me with like all the profs and instructors. And I didn't think people would be so understanding. So like, I ended up dropping out anyway, but it was my first year of college, like, definitely affected because I never went. And then my friendships all went to shit. And like, to this day, it's such a regret of mine because I can take accountability. Because I was being treated a certain way, it was affecting so much of how I reacted to other people because it was embedded in me that like, you're nothing, or like, no one gives a shit. So I'm the first to admit I was fucking dramatic. And like, I would like, if I felt attacked, like, I would bark back or try to bark back. And it's like, no one's trying to hurt you. But I came from a place where someone was hurting me and that was the person that loved me most. So anyone else, like, even if you're trying to show me your care, like, fuck you. Like, one little thing and I'm going off at people. I had a group of friends. Luckily, I'm still friends with some of the girls now, from my first relationship. And like, we all grew up together since we were 12. But I think the psychological one, that's when I lost a lot of close people in my life. And I think it's because like, I just became so obsessed with it. Like, I know people, like, I know he puts in a way where like, she's obsessed with me. And like, in a way, it's like, yeah, I feel like I was like just so like consumed and obsessed with like the concept of like, I needed to be with this guy because behind closed doors he was making it seem that way, but then out in public it's like, holy fuck, like, she's crazy. And now I look back and I'm like, maybe I kind of was. And a lot of my friends, like, I just reconnected with one of my best friends last month and we talked about it and I was like, I'm so sorry, like, I know you're in a point in your life where it's not your job to deal with your friends constantly going back to the same guy. Like, how many times can your friends be like, Joe, you need to stop. Like, when are you going to see it's a bad pattern? Like, he's not a good guy. Like, he keeps hurting you. And the next week I'm like, oh, I was with so-and-so and blah, blah. And they're like, okay. And then like 2 days later, it's the same thing. And they're like, it was exhausting. And like, as much as we tell you, you're never going to learn your value or your worth until like you do it on your own. So it took 2 years later and me having a very healthy, good boyfriend for me to have my good friends back in my life. I finally have a relationship with my parents. Like, my job is great. And it's because well, not only do I have someone that values me, but it's because I spent the time to like heal and value myself first. So yeah, I definitely ruined my 20s and my relationships with some of these men. But we're doing great now. We're definitely better.
Like, thriving.
Yay.
So how did you like rebuild that just self-worth? Because I feel like going through, I know this is just like, I feel like going through a physically abusive relationship and then
Mm-hmm.
going through an emotionally abusive relationship, like, I feel like your self-worth couldn't have been good after they were saying shit like that. Like, it was
No.
you were probably like, oh my God, like, what am
And it
I
was like middle of
doing?
COVID, and I decided to move to downtown alone, away from my parents. So when the psychological relationship ended, like, mind you, I had to see this guy every day. So it was like always like a slap in the face. Like, it was like constantly getting jabbed in the heart. I was so freaking depressed. I lived in a loft, like right under the Calgary Tower. And I used to go home. I wouldn't eat. I'd count the lights on the Calgary Tower until I fell asleep on the couch. And like, I didn't clean anything. There was clothes everywhere. I was so depressed to the point where I was like, and not that I would like ever hurt myself, but like, it would run through my mind like, am I even worth anything? Like, what if I just like did it tonight? Like, if I left the lights on, maybe someone from outside on the street would like be able to see me and call security, and that's how someone would find me. But I'd just sit there and be like, if I didn't talk to anyone for 3 days, I don't think like anyone would ever find me or know. And it just like happened for months to the point, I think my turning point was so embarrassing. I just remember cooking something and I just like didn't clean the pot, or I just like that's how bad it was. Like I was not eating, I wasn't doing anything. And I just remember like seeing flies one day. And I was like, why are there so many fucking flies in the house? Like, fuck, I should really clean. And I remember opening that pot and there was just like bugs everywhere. And I was like, holy shit, Joanna, get your shit together. Like, are you fucking kidding me? I just grabbed garbage bags. I threw everything out. I was like, stop. Like, you need to stop. This cannot be your life. You're like living in a bougie ass loft in downtown, and this is what you're allowing your life to be. And then I just remember I used to eventually I just loved being alone. Like every night I would come home before and be like, why am I alone? Like I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have anyone. And in my culture, it's like, get married young, have kids. Like that's all we ever talk about, being brown. It sucks. And then I just like love being alone after like a couple months. I was like, oh my God, I love it here. Like I live in downtown and everything's opening up again and I can walk across the street and go to the bar, and I started meeting all these people. I remember my friend used to be a server at one of the restaurants. I'd just go sit in a booth alone. I like got a promotion. I was like, my body was looking good. They got new gym equipment in the gym at the condo. Like it was great. And it was just being alone. Like I would have never, my friends are right. If you don't go through it alone, if you don't realize your value, it doesn't matter what someone else says. Until you love yourself, you should not even be allowed to love anyone else. And all through my 20s, I would say I never loved myself because I was so focused on loving someone else and like over pouring into their cup that I didn't even give a shit about my own. So with me not valuing myself, that's what allowed them to value me at what they wanted. And since I had no value, I just agreed with whatever they wanted to pour into my cup. Yeah. Deep, I know.
No, I love that's actually so cool because like you went from like and it's kind of just your perception change because like you're in this loft and you're like depressed and not happy and whatever being alone, and then all of a sudden you're like I feel like you have to hit that
Oh,
point
yeah.
of it being like you're right, like the pan with the bugs in it. You're just like, holy fuck, what am I doing?
Like literally, you cannot get lower than that.
And once you hit like that point where you're like, this is awful, what the fuck am I doing? It's like everything, like you've already hit your low point.
Yeah.
Like you've hit rock bottom. And so it's like it only goes up from there. So like obviously then stuff starts happening, and I feel like the more good that's happening, it's just kind of like
Oh,
domino
yeah.
effect, and then you're like, oh my God, my life is great now.
Yeah.
You know? And
Even with my health, I found like until I was actually happy with my life, I wasn't seeing any results at the gym, or I wasn't seeing like anything until I was like actually happy, and then everything just happened and I was like, "Oh, I can wear a crop top now. Cool. Great."
you're like, yay, my
Yeah.
life completely
Everything's going
changed.
great. Yeah. But yeah, that's like
Wow.
yeah.
So, okay, I have a lot of girls that listen to this podcast,
Yeah.
and I feel like some of them it might be in a situation. Maybe they're in a physically abusive relationship, maybe they're in an emotionally abusive relationship. Maybe they don't even know it until they listen to this podcast and they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, I'm worth so much more than this." What advice would you give them if they're in that space?
Well, I would just say like social media is such a big thing right now. And that's one thing I did for years was hide behind my social media and act like everything's okay. And it's okay not to be okay. Like there are so many outlets. So like instead of using social media as like a cover for what's going on in your life, like research the outlets because everyone goes through it. Like 96% of women in Canada go through either psychological or physical abuse before the age of 16. Yeah, like there's statistics around it, which I've like researched. And I was one of those girls, like, yeah, but like, why would I talk about it? Because like, what's everyone gonna think? Or my life should just look perfect because everything on Instagram is so perfect. And it's like, no, it's not. Like, it's okay to talk about it. Talk to your best girlfriends about it. Like, luckily, we're in 2024 now where you can talk about it, and it's not like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to be involved in this. Like, it's so hush hush. You can literally Google about domestic violence and like it's all there. And domestic violence isn't just physical, it's psychological too. But like the other thing, don't ever let a man put value on your life. A man or a woman. Don't let anyone put a value on your life. Like if I didn't waste all my 20s trying to find love in other people and what they gave me and just finding it on my own, like I think my life would be a lot different now. Not that I'm not happy with my life, but that's definitely my advice. Like love yourself. Find out who you are and love yourself. And if you are going through it, it's okay to reach out. Like reach out to me, reach out to you, like reach out to anyone. It literally does not matter. No one's going to run away from you and be like, screw you. You deserve it. Like, just reach out to anyone.
Wow,
Cry.
what a fucking way to end this podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the Lifted podcast.
Thank you for having me, my first podcast.
Pop the podcast cherry.
I'm like, I could not.
Guys, thank you for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you at the next episode. Bye.